Hello and welcome to another season of Outlet Conversations. It is season 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, St. Louis. I see.
That was my team sport. Yeah.
See?
That was what I say at like all the sports games.
I'm Vince.
Hey family, I'm Ashley.
And we want to kick off this season of Outlet Conversations, kind of taking you all behind the curtain in our lives.
I told Vince this is like the darkness because we're talking about not necessarily a fun season of our life. We're throwing it back circa 2018.
2018.
Yeah.
I want to really give everyone an insight into the dynamic of our marriage, the dynamic of our ministry, the dynamics of our mind, and what we really consider a major inflection point in our calling.
Yes.
Because I think had we not stewarded what we're going to talk about well, I don't know if you and I, where we'd be.
We wouldn't be here for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And just what we've seen. So you can kind of, hindsight is always 2020. And we were just having a conversation, like we're doing an outlet conversation, then let's give the people what they want. And just kind of talk to you all as honest as we know how. And so today we want to talk about a behind the scenes look at how the outlet came to be. And I love our church.
Oh my gosh. Our church is amazing. If I wasn't the pastor, I would still attend our church. Like, that's how much I like our church.
I mean, the authenticity, and of course, we're not just saying this because we're the pastors.
No.
But
I think that was the thing we always said, was we wanted to have a church that we would attend.
That could not just be dependent on us taking care of it, but when we need to go to church, we can go to church and get fed
and poured into.
And
important.
It's been a joy in the relationships. The life change that we have seen in the last 5 years has been amazing. But anything amazing that you do does not come without a cost and does not come at a price. And I don't know if anybody really knows like where Outlet came from. And
I think part of that was intentional. I think a part of that was so this is the thing, whenever you start something and let's say the foundation, or not even the foundation, but how you start maybe wasn't in the best space, you want to be careful not to interweave your past pain to your present purpose.
Yeah.
And I think we're very intentional about what parts of our story we told.
Right.
Not that we were ashamed of it. Well, we kind of were ashamed.
Oh, I was absolutely ashamed. Absolutely. Man.
It was not. It was very humbling. It was humbling. But
extremely.
We wanted to be careful because if you share things too soon, you come off looking bitter.
Yes.
You come off looking desperate. And so you almost overshadow what God is really trying to do because you're too busy living in the past. So we were very intentional about that part.
And I've always said it's easier to gain sympathy than it is to earn respect.
Oh, absolutely.
And
sympathy is so much better.
But you have to keep telling sympathetic stories in order to
stay in that space.
To stay in
it's like playing
relevance.
victim.
Yeah.
You're playing the victim. Yeah.
And I knew that wasn't sustainable. And although we had real feelings, real emotions, some things that we'll share today, the greater good was to how can we remain respectful. And publicly, it was the absolute fight of our life. But I am so grateful because you look back over the time that we've had and it hasn't been a vent session or we're defined by a moment. You really don't want ministry, your life, to be defined by a moment. The moment is a part of your story, but the moment is not your story.
Yeah.
And the reality is, if we're being honest, anybody that has known me from when I was a teenager and even before, all the way back to probably 4 or 3 years old, they knew that, I would be doing some type of ministry thing. Even when you were coming up in church.
Yes, I was serving in various spots in the ministry. So yeah, and then we got together. It just kind of amped up.
Well, amped up, but I don't think I knew where I was going when we got together.
Well, I can't say that I was praying to be this, but.
Absolutely not. She started in nursing school.
I thought I was going to be somebody's doctor's wife, I don't know. I know, but amen. I'm blessed. I'm happy to be.
You got prophetic words, but you had a natural gift with people, with children, and with leadership. So there were certain things kind of working behind the scenes all throughout our life, and we got together as teenagers.
We did.
Started off in ministry. Really, the entire time we've been together
we've been in ministry.
It's been in ministry, and so we've been able to kind of walk this journey together. And I want you to be honest in this conversation.
I'm just playing. Okay. Because anybody who know me, she can be real blunt, and I can.
That's that's
why they kept me off these, y'all. They don't want to try to know the real. They don't want to try to know.
No, we do. Mm-hmm. I want you to be honest, because over the years I've had to fight, different, I guess, narratives that have been, placed out here in these streets. Mm-hmm. And you live with me, so if I'm capping or lying, as they call it, then definitely call out a cap, and
Absolutely.
So on and so forth. Oh, I
I
know you will in a heartbeat.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say that for us, our heart has always been to serve people.
Absolutely. Yes.
And I think to the detriment of my family and my marriage at times.
Yes. Now, there's another podcast. We didn't talk about this, but we talked about the state of the church. I think part of that is we were taught, if we're really honest, we were taught to put the ministry above your family.
Yeah.
And so it would be times I'd pull up at the church, and let's just say the first lady is somebody pulling up too. Y'all know my husband was going to service. The first lady, when his own wife, the first lady of his life, was pulling up at the same time.
I said tell the truth. I didn't say come out with the truth.
But had you come to me and not her, it would have been a whole issue. Well, why aren't you helping her out the car?
Facts.
As if she's somebody, amen. But you know what I'm saying? So we were taught this.
Yeah.
And you were taught to, bypass the needs of your family for the church.
Okay, so you just want to go out here and go for it.
We were.
All right, and that is true.
It's true.
From a financial standpoint, you're taught to not have additional streams of income, so you're dependent upon one set salary. And let me just be honest, when you're not the pastor of the church, you're really not making that much money.
No, at all.
But you're grateful because you're doing your passion, and quite honestly, I've always viewed it could have been a detriment to our household. I always viewed the work of the ministry as like, I can't believe I get paid to do this.
But I think some people's intentions were to pimp that passion.
Oh,
this
girl gonna be savage
today. They know like your heart, and some people, and I'm not talking about all pastors and all spiritual leaders, no, but there are a lot of them that do this. And you have to be really careful of, Lord, utilizing your gifts versus being used for your gift, and you got to know where that boundary is, because I will say in churches, some churches are machines. They just gonna roll you. And if you don't have good boundaries, they will crush you like completely, to where you are so burned out, you're so tired, you're so bitter, you're so mad at the church, mad at the Lord, mad at everybody, which is, I think, where our church is, what the state of the church is now, as globally speaking. I think that's where a lot of people are, that they want nothing to do with the church because of all this.
So as you're talking about that, I'm thinking about in my own life, like what was the change from where I was the doormat? Because this was me prior to even Georgia.
This was you, yeah.
Yeah, this is me prior to Georgia. So it was a journey of discovering what are boundaries. Yes. Are boundaries biblical? Mm-hmm. That was years of trial and error in of itself.
And every time we exerted our boundaries, you got boundary backlash from the leadership, like every single time. That was why we got fired, because you exerted a boundary. And so you're just not taught to do this, and so when you do it, you get severely punished. And this time it was at the detriment of our family, because in 2018 we both didn't have an income when you lost yours.
Oh yeah, that was real. That was real.
We felt it.
But that actually, I would say in 2018 it really wasn't about a boundary, although boundaries kind of underlined it. It was more so about emotional health and spirituality.
I'm telling the truth.
Yeah, being comfortable enough to say the tough things. Ideally, if you could go back and have the conversation, I may have probably framed some things better.
Of course, there's always
you can always say things better, but I did tell the truth. I told where I was. I told what I was doing, and quite honestly, it was prior to pastoring my church. I always felt like there were two things that are true. Number one, I knew one day I would pastor.
Yes, and I knew that too. Yeah.
I really, at the moment, prior to starting the outlet, I wasn't trying to pastor as soon as we were.
We did no.
Because I was finishing my master's, and we said that we would start to have a family.
Yes.
So we were in a family planning, finishing a season of life during that time, and so you needed stability in order to do those things.
Do that. Yes, we did.
And so the truth of the matter is, no, it was not in 2018. Let's go out here and get started.
No.
The second thing that was true is the church that I was employed at before I started pastoring. Mm-hmm. I never saw myself pastoring that church ever.
I didn't want you to, actually. No.
Well, I didn't see myself because, quite honestly, I always felt like because of the role that the pastors of that church had played in my life, that my life's job was to serve them.
Which is another manipulative tactic. You think about it. It was father, son, and we hear this a lot, spiritual fathers. And honestly, I have nothing against people who do truly have a spiritual father, spiritual parents in the faith that you get fed from, you get poured into. I actually have no problem with that if they're true in that role to you. But I think we use that term manipulatively. And we say, that's my spiritual son, that's my spiritual father, and we do things again. But
let's go back to state. We will release an episode on State of the Church. Yeah. But let's go back to what you said earlier. It's taught. So prior to that church, we were taught, at least I was taught in the church that I started in, that the pastor of the church, that's your daddy. Yeah. His wife is your mama. And so everybody is running around saying mom, dad, mom, dad, mom, dad. But what happens is subconsciously you begin to put real expectations
on these people,
on these titles and these positions that you're calling them mom and dad. And the fact of the matter is the church that we learned it from had 20,000 on record in children. You can't take care of 20,000 children. So you have 20,000 people expecting you to be their mom and dad. Uh-huh. You got 300 people that you pay calling you mom and dad. Yep. You got folks older than you calling you mom and dad. Yep. And you think, and you're training, especially because I grew up in this environment.
We're talking about mega ministry.
Yeah, I grew up in the environment that, okay, who's my daddy? Who's my mommy? Who's my daddy? Who's my mommy? Okay, I'm at this church. You're my daddy. You're my mommy.
Oh my gosh.
And I would say that because of the expectation of just in a non-contextual and a non-spirit-led mother-father, spiritual mother-father relationship, you have these expectations that you don't verbalize toward them to be mom and dad. And they cannot, because God didn't call them to be your mom and dad. And I'll say this on a tangent. Those environments capitalize on people who have had terrible relationships with their biological mom and dad. And you'll notice that people who have a strong sense of identity or a strong sense of who their parent is,
it's a red flag to them.
Or they're like, I mean, I hear everybody
almost
saying
sounds
that.
Cultish a little bit from non people that are not used to that environment. They're listening and they're like, whoa, that don't sound kosher. But when you're growing up in it.
But I would say yes, I looked at my last employers as spiritual mom and dad. But I think my commitment to them was because as a teenager, what they put in me helped to frame my decision making that produced great benefits, even down to the type of spouse. So I guess that dominant thought led me to, like, I'm going to serve them until I can't. but at the same time, I know that there's something more. And in 2018, 2017, 2016, really, there were some years that the Lord really began dealing with me about ministry has to look different from what you've always seen and what you always known, and a level of realness. Really, He was calling me to. So when I was given really an ultimatum,
you were,
of this is what I want you to do, but you want to do something different. Well, you need to get out and figure out what that looks like. And really given the rough route of you don't want to do what I want you to do, then all of these years of service, you can kick rocks. I'm going to tell the people what I want to tell them.
That's when that dad role shifts real fast.
Good luck
Yep.
in
life.
Yeah.
See ya.
Yeah. And quite honestly, who am I?
Yeah. I'm you one of the 30,000 sons.
Who am I?
Sons they got.
So now we're on the other side. And quite honestly, just speaking to that ultimatum and that decision, had I not been released the way I was released, I would have never released.
True. This is true about you.
I would still be where I was to this day. To this day.
Probably single. Probably single.
That's another conversation for another day.
But yep.
But sometimes God allows things that are uncomfortable to push you into where you're ultimately supposed to be.
Absolutely.
So when I look back 5 years, He had to do that.
Yeah, He did.
And
it hurt, but He did.
And the reality was, and you go back and you look at, we got our journals and everything. I got my journal right here. If I go back, I realize Him making that decision for me, because I didn't come to Him and say that God is leading. He had to make that for me, had me to figure out what He did was what I should have been doing
the whole time.
His decision forced me to depend on God and nothing else.
And when I got down to it, now when you're feeling all these things,
oh yeah, you wanna say, man, F the police.
Yeah,
like
you really want to go in on that person for hurting you. Like, how could you do this to our family? We were faithful to the ministry. We were faithful to the assignment, to you all, and you do this to us, right? It felt very unfair. But truly, they did push us. I think I got mad. It came out one time in prayer. I said, Lord, I don't like trusting you this deeply. Like, this is uncomfortable. Faith is one thing, right? Walking in faith is one thing. But it's easy to walk in faith when you already got something, right? And you can just go from faith to faith. You just walk in something else. But when you don't have anything, that's when it got really hard. And it got really... it was the rubber meeting the road. We saw where our relationship was with each other.
Absolutely.
With the Lord.
Absolutely.
It was everything. It was everything on the table. And then in that season, God calling us to lead. What do you do when the leader is bleeding? Like, what do you do when your whole life is seemingly crumbling and you're having to put on a face? You're having to say public things that you really don't feel.
You don't feel. Oh, we love them.
Right.
God bless them.
We had made a decision to forgive, but that takes time. Like,
the feeling.
You don't feel like, oh, that's all over and it's done. Like, you're still living.
But that statement of faith is so healthy, because when your feelings do catch up, it already aligns to what you've been saying. So from that moment, Father, forgive them.
Yeah.
I'm
gonna say my prayers wouldn't forgive them at the first. But like my prayers was, Lord, get them. Like, I was very vengeful in my prayer. I'm gonna be very honest with y'all, keeping it 100. But in that season, the Lord had to show me, and that's when He got real with me. And I was looking at them, but it was a me thing. And so from there, we went on the upward swing. But I had to go low. What was your chef say? You got to go low.
You got to have a go low session. Before you can go high.
Yeah, me and the Lord had a lot of go low sessions. We was low. We was rock bottom low. And then He brought me back up from there. But
so I think the trepidation around actually airing this conversation is because we made a covenant decision.
Yes.
That we would not tell this part of the story.
Until the
story got a little better, till some chapters turned.
Hey, and I'm gonna be very. So if you know our story, you know where we came from. We started under some trees. Well, if you don't know, we started under some trees.
Before we get to the trees,
before we
let me talk about the fact that when you're down to nothing,
Yes.
like you said, nobody's employed.
Nobody.
And churches don't pay into unemployment.
Nope.
So
So
you
you're
don't
not
get to draw
severance.
unemployment.
Nope.
So what you have to do is you got to figure out what's next. And so my mindset went to, God, if you're real, I'm going to trust you. What am I to do? And God always goes back to the last thing he told us to do. Last thing he told me to do is he's called me to ministry. I didn't ask to leave the ministerial job where I was at, so he wants me to continue in ministry. So I said, Lord, what does ministry look like? He said, it's time for you to pastor. I said, oh. And so all of this is happening in a matter of hours because the reality is I only have so much savings to live on.
We were living off savings. Thank God we had some of that, but we were living off savings, but we were in survival mode.
Yeah.
If you ever been in survival mode, you can't really think clearly in survival mode. You are really going from how am I going to get to this day, to the next day, to the next month, and what does that look like for my family, right? So we were in, yeah.
So if you're a leader of a household, what you have to do in that moment is what is next? And I know there are a million things I need to take care of, but I've got to take care of the most important thing. And the most important thing was we've got to do next steps. And God will always have you learn things along the way. He will place different people and relationships in your life along the way. So you don't want to burn any bridges as you go through your life. And so when I accepted that, okay, pastoring is the call. Okay, God, you're going to have to make all this happen because we don't have any resources to get this said church going.
Up and going.
And I remember day 3, and this is my actual journal, y'all. So I needed to journal. I mean, we spent probably hours in worship
I wish I
just
would
to.
have brought my journal. Oh man.
Yeah, your journal's probably gonna be on another First Lady Tell All.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's this episode of Outlet Conversations is X-rated for language. No, day 3 of after everything went down. I woke up feeling helpless, hopeless, and afraid that I've let my wife, my family, leadership, and all let down all the people of God. And I'm unsure if I will be dragged through the coals and my legacy tarnished by being known as a quitter. But I began a 3-day intensive with Dr. Sam Chan. We had a leadership 8 hours but it was pouring back life into me at one of the lowest places of my career. And a couple of days after, the Lord just visited me in a dream, Acts 27, 23, and 25, and just reassured us that he's got us and that an angel will be there to watch over our family, and that God is our identity and God is our purpose, and his goodness will keep me and my family safe. And he said, everything that I've said to you will come to pass. Mm-hmm. And so you have to anchor these things when you don't see these things. And so, yes, from that, some miraculous things that we've talked about other times with the church.
We had some miraculous things happen in the dark spaces. We had some really miraculous, but let me tell you, miracles don't necessarily feel fun when you need them.
They don't.
Can I be very honest? Miracles don't feel fun when you need them.
Yeah.
Okay. They feel like that you feel relief, but you also feel like, God, why am I having to live this way?
So much so, listen, y'all, to the point that because our church was starting, we had no data points. We didn't know what type of resources were coming in. We did not draw a salary from our church officially until the year 2020. So we went to 18, 19, 2020. So that meant that we literally were believing what God said, give us this day our daily bread. Mm-hmm. And so other opportunities were coming open outside of the church, which taught me a skill that I didn't have leading up to that. My entire mindset about ministry was formed from being employed through mega ministries. So this startup world, this bivocational world, really every penny mattered.
Yeah.
Everything mattered. I can vividly remember, and this is another thing. I have great mentors who said, don't get up there and beg. Don't talk about what's going on. If God is God, he will move on the hearts of the people. And let me tell you, there has been one family who has been giving us every single month for the last 5 years. Yep. They don't understand that.
That's been a lifeline.
In 18, when they did that, you're talking, that was like the first consistent thing that we saw. You're literally preaching in 2018. I'm preaching.
Oh yeah, we're having
in 2018.
Faith,
and
love.
and I have a thought of, God, how is my family gonna eat?
Yes.
But God be the glory. And everybody's like, we're looking outside, looking in. We're seeing God just, and we're living it, but it's hard to see the hand of God when you're in a place of desperate faith.
Yeah.
And that's where we were.
So I remember, I think during that time, I would dare to say you were in depression. Like
Functional.
This was
Functional
the first
depression.
time I had ever saw him. And if you know him, he's the most positive, most uplifting person. But this was the first time I'd ever seen him depressed, because he was having to lead, still very much hurting, trying to heal, right? But then, and I say trying to because it was like you're pushing against the mud, like we were fighting to get healthy. Because I think during that time of even us starting a church, there was still so much mischaracterization of just everything going on a public platform that we didn't necessarily have the same influence to speak against.
No.
And had we spoken against it, we would have, again, looked bitter, desperate.
And quite honestly, the wisdom of God said, just remain silent. And just do, and it is like your biggest fight is to defend your character.
Absolutely.
And the Lord just said, Vince, you don't have to defend your reputation, because I, as I said to Abraham, will make your name great. But it does not feel good. You're dealing with a sense of what we call community divorce.
That was new. I don't even think we realized, I'm over here tearing up. I don't think we realized what the detriment that took. So, when you're in a church and, people, families, you've been like doing life with people, right? Yeah. So we were doing life with certain families, and it was like all of a sudden, stop calling, stop. I mean, it was like we had the plague. It was like
people that we had once were there.
They were over our house, eating with us. We watched their kids. It was like,
I mean, like, you cannot associate, and quite honestly, we had friends to help us, and it hurt their employment.
Oh, absolutely. That was another thing.
It was just that
I didn't think about.
That
it was the shrapnel from the onslaught of us getting hit.
And so quite honestly, you're having to believe God, but you're hearing it, and Satan will take the lies of others and have you begin questioning yourself. Like maybe I didn't. Here, maybe I should have said. Maybe
And this was what made being silent so hard.
Yeah,
because we saw the toll it was taking.
'Cause I'm like, God, I trusted you, but I don't have steady income. Yeah. And I was taught that if I did this a certain way, that it would look a certain way, and
it's like trusting God right off a cliff. That's what we did.
And I mean, just everything, but man, there was such a purity.
Yeah.
And
when you are going through something really, a big fight in your life, you don't really have time to think about
what they said,
any of the drama. You really are, the bulk of your time, I know the bulk of my time was spending time trying to get myself together, get my sanity, my mental health, so that I could go out and even stand with my husband, during a service or pray.
I was not going to get up every Sunday and talk about what happened to me as if the people who are sitting out there didn't have stuff and worse happened to them.
That's so true.
The fact of the matter is, as one of our mentors always reminds us, God has still been good. We didn't, clearly by them pictures we saw, we ain't missed no meals. God had been faithful.
Yeah.
You just got to get over the hurt feelings of the betrayal, the disappointment, and really the hurt feelings that you realize that you weren't really trusting God for him to be your supplier and God in your life.
You realize who your source was really in. And I would say to that point, anybody who's going through a fight, mental health, get a good therapist to help you through. We always think we want to push through ourselves. If you're not having somebody kind of walk alongside you, you end up storing the tools that you use for survival in life. Yeah. And those tools aren't necessarily what you need for everyday life, but you end up using it on other people who are really sent to help you.
Yeah.
So you have to be careful of what you did in one season. Make sure that you're out of that season and that you no longer need those kind of skills in this new season, right? Because you can end up hurting people that you didn't necessarily mean to hurt.
What I've noticed is a theme about our ministry and how we do ministry is, for whatever reason, God allows certain tough seasons in order for us to better minister to others on the other side of those seasons.
They're not always fun, but yeah.
And I'll be honest, being a part of a mega ministry, the majority of my ministerial time, you kind of look down on people who...
we were in a bubble.
Yeah, you look down. Like if you have 500 members, what's wrong with you? Or you have 250 members, what's wrong with you? You have 50 members, what's wrong with you? You're not doing this, you're not running that. It's because you don't have faith. And when you start with zero, like nothing...
You're grateful for 5.
The opening balance in our church account after our first service was $2,900 and $2,917, so $2,917, lock, stock, and barrel. That was it. I think we had like 84 in attendance. I wrote down these notes. I'll never forget. We started with 84.
That was amazing.
Yeah, 84 people. 64 people that day said they want to become members, and we had 32 volunteers. So that was kind of where you start.
We were so poor, y'all, that on the day of our service, if you want to call it that, we were under some trees. We did it Easter morning.
No, that's not that service. That was accidental by itself.
Well, that's what I'm counting.
I'm not counting.
We gathered.
We accidentally got together, and I just didn't want to miss Easter because I just felt bad about missing Easter.
We were so poor. We went to a park.
Okay.
We were like, y'all meet us at a park.
Yes,
under some trees.
We did.
We were so poor that the people that really loved us and that came to support us, they're now members, praise the Lord, but they came to support us and they brought donuts. We didn't buy any of that stuff. They brought the donuts. They brought the coffee. I guess they realized these people, they ain't got no money. So we ended up having, and it looked so nice out there with coffee nut. We didn't buy none of that stuff. It was the people that, just came to help out and said, I want to see this work. And it was really beautiful.
A lot of what we went through helps to shape you, helps to form you, so that because you get put in the same positions as you keep going. And one thing we always say is, do not judge what somebody does until you sit in that same seat and have a choice to have to do what they do.
Absolutely.
And so you understand that there's a lot that goes into decisions, especially as a pastor. There's a lot that goes into sitting in that seat. There's a lot of information that people, even staff, don't know.
They have
and there's sometimes you take hits.
Oh yeah.
And people could dog you all day long, and they don't even realize you're actually shielding them.
The real story. Yeah.
And so
And that was another part. We had so much we could have shared, but we realized that everybody wasn't ready to hear the truth.
Absolutely.
And you go would think, well, you always think as Christians, well, the truth should always be told. Yeah, should. However, if the truth is going to turn people away, then the Lord has blinded their eyes for a reason, right? And in due time, they will too see what you see. But sometimes it's not your story to share, because then you end up...
Yeah, make it a practice to not speak negatively about someone else that another person may have not had that same interaction with.
Right.
Here's why. Number one, it could be isolated to what's going on in the dynamic that you all have.
Could be.
Or if it's their pattern, then that person will naturally see
They're
it.
going to see it eventually.
And you don't want to be the one who's saying, well, listen, I heard, because you start getting into being...
What's it called? Wee in the water.
Yeah, I don't have time to go into that story.
I don't have time to go into that. But it's almost like, you put your bias and your filter on somebody else.
So you want to make that a point. So the reality is, inside of my head, inside of our heads, inside of our home, we had real real
we had honest.
real
We were
honest. I mean, feelings, they were raw, everything.
That's probably the only safest place we had, really.
But as you have confessions that are positive and of faith, your feelings catch up to where you're confessing, and then it propels your life. So you leave from those places. But our purpose today of sharing with you all is to kind of show you behind the scenes just a tad that everyone deals with something.
Everybody. Yes.
But you have to make a decision that no matter what you go through, that you are going to trust God, and we can be living witnesses that there was not one word that God has said that has failed and fallen void. God's word is real. Yes, if you're out there and you're dealing with a tough season, a breakup, a divorce, tough employment situation, listen, make it a point to take the negative, allow God to heal your heart, process it through help, through mental therapy, through journaling, etc., and flip it and make it for the good, so that when you come out of just your feelings being hurt, you're able to be a light,
step out in faith, really.
To those around you. And so we fast forward, 5 years later. Of course, there were so many different other lessons,
different things that happened along
we
the way.
could share. 5 years later, we look back, and everything that we went through was worth it for what we're doing now.
Yes.
And
even down to having our child, it was like the Lord brought back everything that we thought we missed in that season.
Absolutely.
And it wasn't the way we thought he would bring it, but we learned, like he said, we learned a lot of lessons. I think one of the things when you are hurt, yes, things form and shape you. We have a lot of cuts from that season, but if you don't treat those cuts of life properly, they will fester, and you will those cuts will end up dismembering you, to a point where you're not in a safe, in a good, healthy position, to where when God takes you there, you won't be the leader he's called you to be, right? So I think it's important just to steward those cuts and to heal and to get professional help if you need to. Get around your friends, be honest, cry, whatever you need to do to get yourself through that season. Because you want to heal from what happened. What happened to you, that's not where God's going to take you.
That's right.
And we are living witnesses of that today. And I was just telling Vince, now this is my petty side coming out, but y'all, from where the Lord is taking us today, it just feels so good to be vindicated. Like I was telling Vince, I was like, listen, I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but like y'all, from where we came from to what we're walking into now, it was nothing short of a miracle that we got what we got. I mean, nothing short of a miracle, and God is faithful. And even this is another faith walk for us, because with a bigger blessing come another level. You got to walk into that thing. So
wait for the 10-year podcast. Listen, Lord have mercy. That's
gonna be another one. So we're on the excited side of it now. We'll tell y'all how it goes. But it just feels good to be vindicated, to be like.
And when she says vindicated, she's saying to know that you leaped in faith, and the word caught you.
Yes.
And it's not just.
And it's not like a private. Yes. It's not like okay, God is healing our heart. Amen. It's like y'all, they got, assets on assets. Like, hallelujah. Right? Like it's a public way. It's a public platform that God has put us on. And it just feels good to know that he's been with us the whole time. But
and lives are being changed.
Oh my gosh!
In a rate that we hadn't
growing crazy. Yeah. Ashers here. I mean, just in every aspect.
The word of God remains true. Yes. But you cannot allow moments to pull you down and stop you from where God is taking you.
Just
lean in. Lean into those tough seasons.
Stay in there.
Stay resilient.
Yes.
Keep your eyes on God. Journal. Hold on to his word.
Yeah.
He'll never let you down.
Amen.
Well, we hope you guys got something out of this story. I don't know if we will go back like this. This was a deep dive. No. This is a deep dive today. But we
mind you, we never told you kind of what the other person did, but that's good. I feel like the journey was our journey. So we're telling you about our darkness and how we did so. Again, and I still think that's so good that we haven't went into that other side of what they did.
Yeah, you can't judge what people do.
Because really, it even don't matter at this point.
At all.
God is still good.
Whoop, there it is. All right. So until next time, We'll see you later.
Love you guys.